Okay. Now, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but because you like imagery, and I'm going to show you some imagery now. Here we go. Ooh, doesn't that look scary? Now, you're just sitting there shivering, aren't you, at these line drawings on this book. Okay? This is, of course, the Book of Ceremonial Magic, edited by Arthur Edward Waite. It's basically a full version of the Lesser Key of Solomon with some other stuff thrown in for good measure. When talking about the Lesser Key of Solomon, you've got to understand that it was probably, in its heyday, the most popular grimoire in the whole of Europe. If there was any practitioners of magic or any people who wanted to be practitioners of magic, they would probably have a copy of the Lesser Key of Solomon somewhere around. What I also find interesting is that Nick Franks mentioned in one of his videos on radionics and radionic machines that people occasionally use seals on the input plate to deliver a message and information to the output plate where there's the sample DNA of the individual who you wish to affect by it. Some of the seals people use come from the Lesser Key of Solomon. If you've seen any of Charles Guzmanio's earlier videos or videos from a few years ago, he attempted a healing using a flashlight and the sigil of Beuer drawn on acetate, followed by a symbol of a photograph of the person who was supposed to be receiving the healing, I think it was, in that order. And then he would go into meditation to try and send, the energy of that meaning to that particular person. So the flashlight set up with the acetate and the photograph, that's essentially all the symbolic physical stuff that she's doing, and essentially everything else is about meditating and using the ideas present in his little DIY kitchen table thing in order to help focus his mind so that he could then do the healing that way. Nick Franks also mentioned that there are some radionics practitioners who essentially just use concentration and meditation and prayer and willpower and don't necessarily use a radionics machine. Alright, those people are essentially much closer to magic and witchcraft. They might not use the seals from the Lesser Key, but a person using a machine with, let's say, flat input and output wells could possibly draw the symbols and use them as the information which is supposed to be being directed to whatever the target is. You must remember, of course, that although the Lesser Key of Solomon was the most popular in the world, it was based upon a hoax. It's also become something which has been the foundation of aspects of the Wiccan movement. We wouldn't actually have the circle casting in its current form if it wasn't for Christians. Okay? Because this is a Christian black magic spell book. So what does that show you? It shows you that, it shows you a few things. If you think about it, some of these images are actually quite nice, quite beautiful in their own little way. And some of the seals, if I can just randomly find some at random, or some of the images anyway. If you're skilled artistically, you could probably draw that quite well. That's a talisman number 8, which means something or other. Okay, and there's another talisman number 10, that means something or other as well. These things can be drawn because they are line drawings. And so long as you're focusing your intention on whatever this thing is supposed to be summing up, alright, then essentially that's the thing which you can send. So you can perceive it as being not a spirit, not a demon, not a this, that or the other, but just as being a symbol which carries meaning. Now obviously a lot of these things, I don't know whether I can find any. Oh, look at that chap. Oh, there he is again. Right, a lot of the spirits and demons that have been written in this book do have a lot of grandiosity in them. Like this one, Leraji, a powerful marquis, coming in the likeness of an archer, clad in green and bearing a bow and quiver. He occasions battles and causes arrow wounds to putrefy. Grandiose, extreme. And that's would probably show you some of the immaturity of the kind of people who traditionally might want to use this stuff. They're either poorly educated people, and therefore they're not really thinking through what it means to do any form of magic, or they're very greedy people because, there's some things here which is promising you sex and money and power and ambition. And a lot of these things a lot of these characters are given high titles. Astaroth, a great and powerful duke, he appears like a beautiful angel riding on an infernal dragon and carrying a viper in his right hand. He must not be permitted to approach on account of his stinking breath, and the magician must defend his face with a magic ring. Astaroth answers truly concerning past, present and future, discovers all secrets and gives his skill in the liberal sciences. He will also discourse willingly to concerning the fall of spirits. Scary, scary, don't you look mean? Okay, but my point is that there's a lot of grandiosity here. One could assume that many of the peddlers of magical charms and scrolls and grimoires of various different types would be quite interested in that type of language. I mean, if they were like completely fraudulent, then essentially the more mystery, the more darkness, the more fear, the more intensity of the emotions associated with this, the more they'll be likely to sell their scrolls. Right? So therefore, the folk myths aren't necessarily as useful as putting things to the test at home. Right? Remember, of course, the only real danger of occultism is what you think. Right? The only real danger of occultism is what you think. And whether you're going to become obsessed by the idea of magic to the point whereby you become some variety of insane religious lunatic and zealot. And if that happens to you, then you won't be there anymore. It'll only be, the fog, the mist. The cults will be there, and your ability to think and reason and rationalize will not be there. So therefore, do experiment with occultism, do experiment with witchcraft and magic, and even demonology if that's your vibration. But remember, it's all about what you think. If you're convinced that you actually had a visitation, you can learn to not be afraid of it through learning how to dismiss it. If you are terrified of all this stuff, then maybe it's just not for you. Full stop, finito, the end of argument. But fear, either positively or negatively, or blowing yourself up to the point whereby you believe great things about yourself which aren't actually true, when put to the test of reasoned discussion, or objectively looking at the facts of your life and what you have achieved and what you haven't achieved, okay? You've got to be honest. You've got to be humble to what you don't know, and you've got to be honest about what you don't know and aren't sure of. And look at the phenomena as you experience them with bottom-up processing, not top-down. Alright? If you do have a radionics machine, like the cool stuff provided by Bacana, then you could easily play with this for your practice. Easily play with this, as well as runestones, astrological symbols, anything else which you feel carries sufficient meaning. But remember, that's like a physical representation of what it is you're trying to do energetically with meditation and concentration and willpower. And once you finish your ritual, you leave the machine running until the manifestation comes into effect. Alright? Does that make sense? Of course it does, because it came out of my mouth. And I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Good fortune, God bless, look after yourself, and keep cool. Don't go insane, and carry on exploring nature.